Hey everyone, this is Will. I'm super excited in this video to show you how you can use Prime by Loop Community on your Mac to control your PTZ Optics camera via MIDI. Now, I was very excited when I saw the PTZ Optics team release this brand new MIDI control functionality. My mind immediately went to churches and houses of worship that are using clicks and backing tracks on stage, and specifically folks using Prime. And I thought, how cool would this be to have Prime open on your Mac, to press play on a song and know with full confidence exactly where your PTZ Optics camera is going to be. You can select a song, the camera will be exactly on the right person as they're singing that song. And if someone comes up to speak, to share a message, you can make sure that when you get to the end of that song, the camera transitions to them just in time. This is a really, really great feature that will continue to keep your congregation involved and interested no matter where they are. So in this video, I'm going to show you from zero to full completion everything you need to make this happen and how to set this up with Prime. It's an incredibly easy feature. Now, here's what we need to make this happen. First thing I have Prime loaded on my Mac. I'm using the Prime multi-track app by Loop Community. And in order to send MIDI, which is what we're going to do to control our camera, you have to make sure that you have Loop Pro Plus. You're subscribed to that. You could do, I believe, a free trial of that. For more information on that, head to loopcommunity.com to check out their different tiers that they have available. Next thing I need is I need my PTZ Optics camera. Hello, there I am. And I want to make sure I have the most recent firmware installed on my camera. So make sure you head to ptzoptics.com to get the most recent firmware installed on your camera. This is a really simple process. They walk you through the whole thing. I was able to do this in about 3 minutes, and it's super simple. Next is we've got to make sure that both our camera and our computer running Prime are on the same network. So what I did to do this, I've got a Mac Mini that's running Prime. I took an Ethernet cable from that and plugged it into a network switch. Then I took my PTZ Optics camera, I plugged an Ethernet cable into the back of that into my network switch as well. Now, you may not realize it, but initially that opens up so many possibilities. Particularly in a house of worship scenario. Imagine being a drummer on stage running tracks for your band using Prime. Your PTZ Optics camera is back at front of house. And instead of having to run a cable very long distance to access that camera, you just plug into a network switch that's on the same network as your camera and you're good to go. So no matter where your camera is, as long as it's on the same network as your computer is, you'll be able to access that. Okay. So now we're ready to get going. The next thing, final piece we need in order to make this happen, so we have to have a Edge or Chrome web browser installed on our computer. Now I'm using a Mac, so I'm gonna use Chrome. Okay, so I'm gonna type in the IP address of my camera, making sure to use a HTTPS secure connection. So I'm gonna hit enter, and on Chrome, this is the message I'm going to see. Now, this is just telling me that, hey, my camera doesn't have a SSL certificate installed on it. If that matters to you and that's important, you likely know how to do that. And you can actually install an SSL certificate directly on your camera to bypass this screen. For more information on how to do that, head to ptzoptics.com. Now, for me, this is perfectly fine. So what I'm going to do, this is the functionality and how it's going to work in Chrome on my computer. I'm going to click advanced and I'm going to go to proceed to that IP address because I know exactly what the IP address is. It's my camera. Now I'm going to go ahead and enter my password in for my camera. And then this is going to take us directly to the web UI for our PTZ Optics camera. Now let's click MIDI Control. And this is where we're going to set up and configure all the MIDI options for our camera. This is where we're going to spend most of our time in today's video. Now, how are we going to get MIDI from Prime to our Chrome browser to our PTZ Optics camera? We're going to do that by using what's called a virtual MIDI bus. If you're on a Mac, the best way to do this is the IEC driver. In fact, I'm going to show you in this tutorial today how to enable and set that up. But if you're on a Windows PC, you could use Loop BE1. You could use virtual MIDI. And I've actually linked to a tutorial below this video to show you how to set up Loop BE1 on your PC, but you can use whatever virtual MIDI solution you want. Now, if you've already done that, then you can skip ahead to the next section. If you're setting up something other than the IEC driver, then pause this video, set that up, and come back and you can skip ahead. So in my case, let's set up the IEC driver now on my Mac. So I'm going to go to Spotlight, which is Command, comma, and I'm just going to type Audio MIDI Setup. And as soon as that pops up, I'm going to hit Enter. Then I want you to go to the menu bar at the top of your screen where it says Window, and we want to click Show MIDI Studio. And then at the top, you're going to click on IEC driver. Now I want to make sure that the device is online. Right now, mine is turned off, as you can see. So I'm going to click this to enable it. The other thing I want to do is I want to make sure that I have at least one bus, one port available here. So I could click this plus icon to add another port. All I need is one. If you don't have one there, click the plus icon to add one. I have one, so I'm going to hit apply and we're ready to go there. So now let's get and talk about how to get Prime connected to our IAC driver. And the best way, again, to think about the IAC driver, it's just a virtual MIDI cable. So we're going to connect that virtual MIDI cable to Prime, to our IAC driver, and then from our IAC driver into our Chrome browser. So I'm going to open up Prime on my Mac here. Okay, and then we want to go into our settings. And again, I should mention, I am using Loop Pro Plus. I've already subscribed to that. You can, again, like I mentioned, I believe start a free trial at Loop Community site. So make sure you've done that before you dive into this section. Now I'm going to go to settings, click this button in the upper right-hand corner here. And under MIDI cues connections, I want to choose the IAC driver that I just set up. So you see IAC driver bus 1, we're going to choose that and we can get out of this. So now that's all we have to do in Prime. Super, super easy to set up and get going. So now we've made the connection from Prime to the IAC driver. Let's make the connection from the IAC driver to Chrome. So let's go back to our web UI here. If you've set the IAC driver up after you've opened this web page, then make sure you refresh. So I'm going to refresh my page. And then under select MIDI controller, in this drop down here, MIDI controller, I want to choose IAC driver bus 1, and we're going to set our MIDI controller. So now with this, we've effectively created the chain. Prime to IAC driver to Chrome. Now Chrome is going to handle the rest of the process to send this to our PTZ Optics camera. Now let's talk about how we actually make this happen, how we add MIDI cues to Prime, and then how those MIDI cues control our PTZ Optics camera. Now before I go away from this page, two very important things to do. First, and most importantly, is to enable MIDI commands to make sure that I can actually send MIDI commands to my Chrome browser. And then here's what I would encourage you to do. Second thing, go down here to display command mapping. Click this and you'll see all the default MIDI mappings that are available on your PTZ Optics camera to be controlled via MIDI. Now in this video, I'm not going to talk through what each of these are, but I just specifically want to point out just a few here. Okay. So we can call presets, we can save presets, we can control the speed of our pan, tilt, and zoom, absolute values for pan, tilt, and zoom. And then we can drive our values, tilt up, tilt down, pan left and right, and zoom in and out. Again, for the sake of this video, I'm just going to breeze over that really quickly. But let's look at this first command here, call preset 1. How is this happening? So in order to pull up preset 1 on our camera, we need to send a note on message. What message do we send? We send MIDI note 1, okay? So in order to call preset 1 from Prime, we need to create a MIDI note on message with MIDI note 1. So let's go into Prime and see if we can figure out how to do that. So let's go to this edit button and I want to long press. I'm going to hold my mouse down and let go and we'll see this edit menu pop up. So we're going to do edit MIDI cues. Okay, so let's get our playhead here. Let's put our note somewhere in our intro. So we're going to move it right about there. I'm going to double click. This is going to drop down my MIDI cues command section here. We want, again, a MIDI note on message. What's the note that we want? We want MIDI note 1. Channel doesn't matter at this point. We're just going to leave it set to there as well as velocity. And we're going to hit save. Okay. So now you can see it's a little hard to see. Let's see if I can zoom in here on my computer. There we go. You see MIDI note 1, C# -2. Now, before we try sending MIDI from Prime, I want you to check one very important setting. Now let's click MIDI. And we want to, in this case, erase all of our MIDI mappings to song sections. Because one thing you'll find by default, or at least what I found by default, is when I add MIDI note 1, that's going to trigger a repeat with the default mappings in Prime. So in order to make sure we don't accidentally trigger anything, we can always add it back. I want to encourage you to click MIDI and then click erase to erase all your current MIDI mappings in Prime. Okay, and we can, again, like I said, re-add these if we need to, and we'll talk about in a moment how to change our mappings if they're interfering. Okay, so with that, we're set up and ready to try this out. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring this in so that you can see, there's my PTZ, hello, there I am. I'm gonna go ahead and call preset 2, so we can see preset 2, okay, it's a little tight shot. And let's press play over in Prime. And I want you to watch Prime, okay? So watch where that MIDI note is. I'm gonna press play. And watch for when we hit our MIDI note here in a second. It's a little after our intro, right there. And then that's gonna call preset 1. So you can see that camera actually moved to be preset 1. So imagine going across your timeline in Prime and adding preset 1, preset 2, preset 3, 4, 5 as your song progresses. You could literally, again, for a different song, change the camera to focus on a different singer. At the end of your song section, or portion of your service, when the speaker is coming up to speak, you could have it send a MIDI cue to actually focus the camera maybe a little wider to see the full stage, which is really, really cool. So the way this works, again, we can add MIDI notes in Prime, and then we can go through and get specific control over that specific command. Now, what if we want to do some of these commands that have control change messages? For example, let's do this absolute zoom here. Okay, so absolute zoom is looking for CC23. So let me show you how we could add a CC value in Prime. So again, I'm going to hold down on the edit button, go to edit MIDI cues. And let's go again, a little after our intro here. So let's move our playhead. Let's double click. This time, instead of note on, we're going to do control change. We're looking for control change. What do we say? 23, I believe. So we're going to go to 23 here. So control change message 23. Velocity, in this case, it's going to function as value. So we said zoom. I want to zoom out all the way to 0. Okay, we'll hit save. And then we're going to move our playhead. This is going to be, let's leave our note there. Let's move our playhead and put our zoom, move our note back there. Move our playhead, put our zoom in. All right, we'll do control change. Again, we're going to do 23. And let's have it zoom all the way in, which is going to look a little crazy. We'll put this at the end of that song section. So now, those are our notes. Let's move our playhead. Let's get out of MIDI. So I stopped moving that, hit done. Let's move our playhead over. Again, similar thing. Let's watch this. So what should happen is we're on preset 1 now. I want to zoom out once I hit that second MIDI note. Once I hit my third MIDI note, then we're going to zoom in. Okay, so let's press play here. Okay, so there's preset 1, which we're already on. Here comes our zoom out. So you can see it zooming out. Zoom in. We're going to zoom in all the way, which is going to go super, super far and crazy. Okay. Now let's talk about if we need to customize this. We started this video, I told you to erase and wipe out all of your MIDI commands in Prime. But let's say we had some MIDI mappings already set up. We're using our loop to this MIDI controller with Prime, and we need to customize this. What do we do? Well, let's say we want to call preset 1. But again, we need to change this to some other value, okay? So let's say we want to call preset 1. We're going to go up to the top here. Let's do call preset 1. We want note on. And let's change this all the way to 127. Now, if I want to change it, I'm going to map PTZ Optics commands to MIDI. Click that button, and you'll see that it's changed to note on MIDI button 127. Then I could go into Prime, just like we've done before, hold down edit MIDI cues, and let's just place this kind of arbitrarily somewhere in our set. Let's double click. This time we're saying note on, we're going to do 127, and we can leave channel 1, velocity 1, hit save. So if you're in a scenario, again, where there's some interference with other MIDI notes, you can change the default mappings from what they were on your PTZ Optics camera to something completely different. Now, what happens though, if you're in a scenario to where you want to change the default, but you're not exactly sure what it's sending. So I'm going to actually change the default. I'm not going to let you see this. This is going to be kind of a bit of an experiment here. I'm going to add a MIDI cue in, and we're going to add this a little later in our song. Okay, so I'm not going to share my screen because I don't want you to see this. You're going to discover as we go. I'm going to add a MIDI cue somewhere in our chorus. I'm not sure exactly what this is. Okay, so I've got my MIDI cue in. Now, this is a little hard to do because Prime's telling me exactly what number it is. But let's say that I don't know what that number is. I'm going to press play here, and let's show you how you can figure this out using a really cool feature in the web UI. So I'm going to click Display MIDI Commands in the browser, okay? And then I'm going to press play a little to the left of this note, okay? And let's watch our browser. Okay, so you see that pop up, note on 97, and our last value is 1. Okay, so what that means is, in case I didn't know what I was sending, again, Prime makes it really easy because if you look up here, it says 97. But I'm going to play dumb for a second. If I didn't know what it is, 97, note 1, I want that to be call preset 1. So I'm going to go here and go back to 97. Let's find that. And then we're going to map PTZ Optics commands to MIDI. So hopefully now you see how easy it is to control your PTZ Optics camera with Prime on Mac. To get started, to download the latest firmware for your device, make sure you head to ptzoptics.com. While you're there, check out the other products they have and the exciting new features coming to your devices. Finally, I want to say thanks so much to Paul and the team at PTZ Optics for enabling and allowing houses of worship and churches to stay focused on what's important and what matters, which is serving their people, serving their congregations, and spend less time focused on the tech. Thanks so much for watching this tutorial, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care, everybody. Bye.